Hello, this is Marc from My Keys to Music. Thanks for joining me on this video. I hope you are staying safe and happy and healthy out there as much as you can. The name of this song is called Just What I Needed. The group is called The Cars. It was released in 1978 on a self-titled debut album also called The Cars. This is a Discovery Series video featuring the Nord Stage 3 where we explore interesting synth sounds and we do our best to duplicate them and recreate them here on this channel.
Doesn't matter where you've been, as long as it was deep, yeah. Always need to wear it well, and you look so fancy, I can tell. And I don't mind you hanging out and talking in your sleep.
You may have noticed that we're not actually listening to the original track from The Cars. In fact, I got this backing track from karaokeversion.com. This website allows you to make your own backing tracks, and you can export them as an MP3 file and provide a near replica of the original minus selected instruments. In this case, I've got backing tracks with no keyboard synth part. Everything you're hearing as far as the synth goes is coming directly from the Nord Stage 3. There's an affiliate link in the description below this video if you want to check it out. There's a couple of different things going on with that synth part some real gems of a secret there that I think is pretty interesting. And it is really a cool little pop song. So what I'd like to do now is take you over to the Nord Stage 3. We'll set it up, we'll play along, and we'll see that little secret that I was telling you about. If you haven't already done so, feel free to subscribe. 70% of the people that watch this channel haven't yet subscribed, so I know you're out there, and if this is something that interests you, whether it be Nord keyboard related or not, there's a lot of interesting sounds and music happening on this channel, so you might want to check it out if you haven't already. For those of you who are students to the My Keys to Music school, if you will, thank you so much. We're up to, 5 courses? I've got 2 free courses and 3 paid courses, and potentially more on the way. This year alone, I'm planning a few more courses as it is, so there's a lot going on there, so check that out at mykeystomusic.com. Okay, let's go grab a Stage 3 and see what we got. Okay, here I have the Nord Stage 3, and we're set up for a song called Just What I Needed from The Cars. My program happens to be located at P11, and this is the one you've heard so far in the video. The name of the program is called Just What I Need, and we'll use this as a template so that we can see what the settings are, and we'll keep going back and forth between this template and a brand new empty area happens to be on P12, and this is where we'll set up our sound. So, starting with the left, obviously we'll need the synth engine on. The fact that there's a pitch stick and a sustain pedal invoked is not really important. For this particular sound, it just happens to be on, so whether they're on or off doesn't really matter for this sound. What does matter is this LFO rate, because at the end, when you hear that last note, there's a vibration happening, and that actually is going to require the LFO to do that. So let's push the monitor button and make sure we have that set. So it's 12 Hertz. So let's go to our sound here, turn the synth engine on, move this to 12 Hertz, perfect, and then it's triangle. Now that we've got this first setting, we need to save that, because if I go back to P11 right now, I'll lose all of these settings. So to do that, I just need to hold the Shift button and push Store, which gives us the opportunity to not only save it, but to name it. So for simplicity's sake, I'll name our sound Cars. I'm just going through here and holding this A button and using this knob here to toggle up and down the letters. I happen to do this with one hand. You can certainly do it with one hand as well. It probably is a little easier to do it with 2 hands the first time you do it. Okay, and I want this category to be synth. So I've got Cars, Synth, and I'll push the button, and it's now telling me, okay, I'll name it Cars, and it's going to go on P12. So I'll hit that, and now we've got the beginnings of our sound. All right, let's see what else is happening. Well, let's audition this. So really, it doesn't sound anything like the sound at this point. Okay, so back to our template. There's no arpeggiator running, fine. Now there is something called mono and glide and unison. So for this, we know it's mono and unison 1. What is the glide amount? I'll go to monitor, toggle the knob to the right, and the glide rate is 2.3. So let's go to our sound and first audition that, but then we'll put mono mode on. Not much happening yet, but if I go to glide 2.3, you can hear the notes are gliding into each other, up and down when I push the keys. And then we'll put unison on. Now it's a little wider sound and sort of a doubling of the oscillator that you hear. We still happen to have a sine wave, so it still doesn't sound just like the sound yet, but we're getting there. So I'll push store twice here, because now that it's named, I can just store, and it'll save my sound. All right, let's go back to our template. On this particular sound, we're not using any of the modulation envelope, so we'll ignore that. We are using a classic saw wave though, so we need to get that set up. So we're using the classic saw. Let's go to ours and make sure, well, we're already in classic, but if you weren't, you can just toggle this over to classic. Move this knob up to where it says saw. Now your keyboard might have 3 knobs, mine has 2, so where you manipulate these oscillators and change them may be different on your keyboard. But you'll still have to pick the classic category. All right, let's save that. And let's audition it too. So the sound is getting a lot closer now. Let's go back. So LFO modulation envelope is not being used for the sound because there's nothing set in this second category here influencing that first oscillator, so there's nothing to control. And obviously there's no pitch either because we don't have that particular effect happening. There's no arpeggiator. We've already talked about that, so the rate and all that doesn't matter. The filter is an LPM, which is the Moog filter, and there's no keyboard tracking and no drive. So let's go to ours and set that to LPM and save. All right, now the LFO amount. I already mentioned there's LFO on that last note, so we will need an amount on there. So let's go see what it is on the original. LFO amount of 2.5. Let's go to ours and move LFO to 2.5. That's how much LFO is going to happen with this sound. Push store. Okay, another important thing here is what's the setting on this knob. So I'll monitor that. And that's actually right in the middle as a 0, so there's no effect happening with velocity or modulation envelope when it comes to that. So let's make sure that ours is 0. I think it's 0 by default when you set up a new sound, so probably didn't even need to change that. Save it. Okay, go back to the original and figure out what this frequency is set to. 6.6 kilohertz, which is somewhere right around here on the dial. 6.6 kilohertz, perfect, save. And is there any resonance happening? Let's go see. 0 resonance. Okay, so again, I think that's a default setting. I didn't even need to touch that knob, but I'll hit save anyway and make sure it's 0. All right, what else is happening? We actually have some vibrato happening, and it's using the wheel. So vibrato on the wheel. Now, why would I need vibrato on the wheel? Vibrato on the wheel is needed not necessarily because the original sound had vibrato in its true sense, because vibrato is more of a pitch change. Let me just quickly turn the frequency all the way up just for a second so I can prove my point here on this vibrato and what's happening here. I have the wheel on my left hand, and I'm about to move it up. Up and down. So that's going to allow the wheel to change the vibrato of the sound. Now, like I mentioned, technically vibrato is not the thing that's used at the end of this sound, but between the vibrato and the LFO kicking in, it comes out as a close imitator of what's happening, because I don't think we can exactly duplicate the type of effect that's happening on that note, because it seems like it's more LFO and less vibrato, but I'm using vibrato and LFO in combination on that last note. And you'll hear that very briefly in this video. Now, along with the vibrato, you'll note that it's going quite quickly. So to change that, I have to push the shift button and hold the sound button and navigate up to the page where the vibrato rate is. And I like to have the rate at all the way up, which is 8.0, because it seems like it sounds closer to the sound or of the original. See how fast that is? that's a little bit more what I hear in the original sound. Now, note that when I change the vibrato rate, that changes it for the entire keyboard, not just for this sound, because it's in the system setting area, not necessarily in the synth setting area. Let's say, for example, I were to go here and change this down to a 4.0 rate, and let's just save that. Now I'll go back to the original sound and look at what vibrato rate is. You see how it stayed at 4.0? So this is a system-wide setting for vibrato rate. So when you do that, be cognizant of the fact that you're changing the vibrato for everything going forward, every sound from that point forward. Likewise, I can stay here and actually go to 8 on this, and then go back to my sound, and of course it'll still be 8 based on what I just said. All right, so that's vibrato. Envelope for the amp envelope is always important on every sound. So let's go see what's happening here. So on the original, the attack is a 6.3 milliseconds. The sustain is all the way up, and the release is 851. So 6.3 and 851. So we'll do 6.3, sustain all the way up, and 851. There we go. Save. Perfect. So I think we've got all the synth settings covered. Let's go see if there's any reverb happening. I won't show it in the camera, but I do have reverb on. I have it set to room 2. And let's see what the rate is for the reverb. It's 6.7. So reverb on, room 2, 6.7. Save. All right, that sounds really good. That's really close. I mean, it may not be dead on, and you can, change these to taste, but I think that's a pretty good start for you to imitate this sound. All right, so the secret. The secret is the first part of this sound starts with a classic saw wave, and it only plays the first time in the song. The first time you hear the synth, it's using the saw wave. Every other time, including all the way through to the ending, it's using a more square-like wave form, which is right here. So all I need to do is move this up a notch when I'm performing it. And now I've got this. Now here on this one, sometimes I hear it with more of a unison happening. So you might want to put that on 2. Again, we're not using the original keyboard from the Cars, so it'll never be dead on exact. But the idea here is to use your stage 3 and get it as close as possible so that you can mimic this. I mean, nothing is exact unless you are the actual band recording it with all the effects, with the exact mixing board, the exact keyboard, and even then, it would probably depend on the mood of the day of the people playing it. So the idea is to get close here. So let's perform this and let's see how it comes out.
And I don't mind you coming here and wasting all my time.
Change it to the square.
In talking in your sleep, it doesn't matter where you've been, as long as it was deep, yeah. Always knew to wear it well, and you look so fancy, I can tell. And I don't mind you hanging out and talking in your sleep. I guess you're just,
Now the ending part.
I guess you're just what I needed. I needed someone to bleed. Yeah, yeah. So bleed me. You're just what I needed. You're just what I needed. You're just what I needed.
All right.
I don't mind you coming here, wasting all my time. 'Cause when you're standing